Welcome into the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, Brendan Glasheen. Today's episode, NFL Week 1, Best Bets, our first Best Bets episode of the season. We will be with you for all 18 weeks and also the postseason. Joining us this year on our Best Bets pod, Mr. Brandon Anderson. He returns from last year. Vegas refund, Luke Swain. These two will be main staples throughout the course of the year. Our third rotating expert, he gets the first crack. Anthony DeBundo is in the third analyst chair today. We will also have Jill Gallant and Grant Neifert joining us throughout the season. So we look forward to you all hanging with us throughout the course of the year. And those of you that are new, welcome. As a reminder, you can find all the picks from this show after we're done in the Action app. Follow our account, Action Network NFL Picks. Our picks this season, along with the Best Bets episode and the Sunday six-pack with Stuckey and Raybon, also available to you on the Action Network podcast. Let's dive right in. No time to waste. We've been talking about these freaking games for 3 months, Brandon Anderson. Our first best bet for Week 1.
All right, let's dig into it. First bet of the year, guys. Texans plus 10 against the Baltimore Ravens. You got to start it the right way. For me, Week 1 is all about preseason reads. So I'm all in on the Texans. If you've been listening to the podcast, reading my stuff online, Texans everywhere. I got futures all over the place. I love the floor raisers on this team. They brought in Sheldon Rankins, Jimmy Ward on defense, Shaq Mason on the line. I love Will Anderson, the top draft pick, my defensive rookie of the year pick. Derek Stingley, shutdown corner type. Missed a lot of last season, back half. He's back as a sophomore. And then, of course, the new coaching staff. I am in, guys, on DeMeco Ryans. I'm in on Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator from the Shanahan tree. They retained Frank Ross, special teams coach. He led the unit to number 2 in the league last year. So I just like a lot of the spine here. The offensive line, I kind of wish they were a little healthier than they've looked so far. But I like the defense. I like the special teams. And the defense was top 10, actually, in DVOA back half of last season, second against the pass. Now they get back Stingley, who missed most of that. They add Will Anderson, the top defender in the draft, and they add DeMeco Ryans, who led, obviously, great defense these last years in San Francisco. So Baltimore, I like the idea. I think later in the season is when we want Baltimore. Obviously, we got Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator. That is a huge departure for what that offense is going to look like. I can't wait to see it, but I worry that it might take them a little time. If you look back, Monken has led an offense 4 seasons previously, 3 with the Bucs, 1 with the Browns. September and October, Monken-led offenses are 9-18-1 against the spread, 33% cover rate, and when they're favored, 2-10 against the spread when Todd Monken leads the offense. This stuff takes time. And this is probably one of the biggest switches offensively that we've seen. Lamar Jackson, it's going to take a little time to go from this very run-heavy Greg Roman offense to probably more of a spread pass attack. So early in the year, 10 points, it's just too much. We just don't know enough about these teams yet. And I think we are assuming too much about Baltimore and maybe not enough about Houston. Week 1 underdogs of 8 points or more, 25-9 to the spread, 74% cover rate over the last couple decades. Week 1 road dogs that missed the playoffs, 64% since 2011 against the spread. Houston's my team, guys. Worst to first division winner, 11-1. And I bring that up because I had to decide, do I want my bet now or do I wait till after this spot where they're huge dogs? I want it now because I think Houston has a legitimate chance to stay in and win this game. Week 1, road underdogs of 7-10 points have a 25% ROI on the money line in Week 1. So give me the Texans plus 10. Give me the plus 390. I'll sprinkle the money line, and let's get this Houston party started out the right way.
All right, you've been consistent on this throughout the entire offseason, into training camps, preseason, and here you are. Your first bet of the year is Texans plus 10. Talking size and totals, of course, for Week 1. Luke Swain, welcome back to the program. Your first best bet of the year.
So my first one is going to be the Seattle Seahawks minus 5.5, currently hosting the LA Rams, which this one does feel like it is somewhat of a too good to be true line, where I honestly don't understand how it hasn't moved since Cooper Kupp has been ruled out. It was 3.5, I want to say, a couple weeks ago. It's been 5.5, I want to say, last week or so. And Cooper Kupp gets ruled out, and it just hasn't. I still think it is going to move up. I would absolutely love if I woke up on Sunday and it was -7. But at 5.5, it is still a play. This Rams team, it's always been the shiny object type team where you have the Aaron Donalds, the Matt Staffords, the Cooper Kupps that are the factor that everyone focus on. And then behind those shiny objects, they have just been really bodies. And that's really it. And going into this year, they are losing 6 starters on defense, which includes Ramsey, Wagner, and Floyd. We don't have Kupp. Stafford didn't play in the preseason. And then when you factor in the pressure rate for the Rams, outside of Aaron Donald, their defensive lineman had 6 sacks total last year. So there really isn't anything to get behind, which is kind of why it feels too good to be true, because at 5.5, this Seahawks offense, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people and make even a leap from last year. I believe in Geno Smith. They have all the home field advantage. There's just too many factors that favor the Seahawks that go against the Rams. And at 5.5, that is my only favorite that I'll be giving out on this podcast, but I'll go Seahawks -5.5.
Young, fast defense. They added in the secondary in the offseason. You mentioned Stafford, injuries concerning heading in. You mentioned didn't play in the preseason. McVay has stuck to his guns on that. And to your point, not just the Rams this week, but from a season-long perspective, that win total at 6.5 and the under 6.5 juice to -140. So it's not just this week. It could be a down year for the Rams. DeBundo, welcome. First best bet, please, for week 1.
Well, it'll be interesting to see Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson against those two Seattle corners. It's going to be tough, I think, for the Rams to move the ball. No offensive line either. I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans +3 against the New Orleans Saints. We were joking with Matt Trebby, our NFL editor, when I requested this game specifically as my first game to write up. So I will have a full preview of this game in the Action Network app. And he was kind of joking around like, why do you want this game? It's so ugly. I think the Saints are a bit of a house of cards, and I think that things could come tumbling down quite quickly for them. They are the second oldest roster in the NFL based on the 53-man. They are slightly younger than the Jets, but remember the Jets with their punter and their quarterback are kind of skewed by a couple outliers. So really the oldest roster overall in the league, and they're relying on a ton of production from very old players on both sides of the ball. And I think that's a major red flag coming into any season where you want to be younger and trending in the right direction. And Tennessee right around league average in age. Also, just don't know what's left of Derek Carr. Carr is the big offseason change. He has not been good in his first year with new systems and new schemes, and he's taken some time, and he certainly had his moments in the NFL. But this is a guy who was in the bottom 8 amongst quarterbacks with at least 100 plays last year in EPA per play, EPA CPOE composite. Success rates were in the tank. He was considerably worse than Andy Dalton in these same metrics. So I think, everybody's assuming, Andy Dalton kind of at the end of his career, they're upgrading at quarterback, but I'm not really sure of that. And the main argument for the Saints, if you're betting on them from a season-long perspective or looking at, their win total, has been the schedule, because they have a very easy, quote-unquote, schedule. But if you just make the Saints a little bit worse than they actually are, and I think they are, then all of a sudden that easy schedule becomes a lot of coin flip games. And I just don't think that they're nearly as good as the market says they are here. With Tennessee, you're buying low, I think, on the Titans after they had a disaster second half of the season. First half of last year, Titans were the clear favorite to win the AFC South. And, did they get fortunate a few times in some of those wins? Absolutely. But remember, everybody got hurt. They returned most of their defensive personnel and their defensive coordinator. And Tannehill back in the fold, somebody who's, I think, consistently been undervalued by the market and put up solid numbers. Last year was definitely a step back from what we'd seen in the maybe Arthur Smith Titan era for their offense, but still was a league average quarterback by EPA and was above average and in the top 10 in success rate last year, Tannehill. So I think this is a clear coin flip game. Throw in some home field for the Saints, but if you're catching the full 3, I like Tennessee with the points. Vrabel as an underdog has always been a profitable endeavor in his career as well. What Whether you think there's something to that or it's just small sample noise is to be determined. But Variable certainly seems to find coaching edges. And that Titans defense, I just am always impressed with how well coached they are and play above their talent level. Whereas this Saints team, it's a whole new offensive quarterback and system. So there could be some growing pains there.
Brandon, I know this isn't one of your official picks. I'm sure you've got the Mike Vrabel trends staring right in front of you right now.
I do, yeah. This was actually my first cut. This would have been my fourth pick. Mike Vrabel, 3-point underdog or more, 22-9-1 against the spread, 71% cover rate, and that includes 19-13 straight up. That is a winning record straight up as a 3-point or more underdog, 59% ROI on the money line there. Derek Carr, bad record ATS as a favorite. Dennis Allen, bad record ATS as a favorite. And another week 1 trend, if you take teams that are road underdogs that did not make the playoffs, that's the Titans, they are 64% against the spread over the last couple decades. Those teams, when it's a 3-point spread or less, coin flippy sort of game like we have here, 15-3 against the spread. So I do not like the Titans at all this year, actually, but I love this spot for them, and the trends line up in Tennessee's favor here.
Brandon, your second one, I think ideally you'd prefer under 3 points when you're taking the favorite here, but you're so high on the Atlanta Falcons in their first matchup of the year, which is a divisional matchup with the Carolina Panthers, a whole new regime with Frank Reich and Bryce Young.
I am. Give me the Falcons -3.5 against the Panthers. And like you said, I'm still waiting on this one. I haven't put it in the app yet because I'm hoping we might get a 3, but I think there's probably a better chance it moves to 4. That can be a key number as well. So probably just going to go ahead and make my bet. Again, preseason read here. And a lot of the same points I said about the Texans, a lot of floor raisers added to Atlanta, especially defensively. Jesse Bates at safety, the whole defensive line really, Calais Campbell, Onyemata, Bud Dupree to pass rush, AJ Terrell, he's been there, but I think with actual defenders around him, he looks like the star he looked like 2 years ago again, rather than the down season he had last year. I saw in DVOA projected for this year, the Falcons ranked 10th in projected defense. That is rich even for my Atlanta love, but man, that sounds good to me because I have this as a top 10 offense. Arthur Smith, second time we get to talk about on the podcast, top 6 DVOA offense, 2 times in Tennessee, 13th last year with no quarterback. And I know we don't really know yet if Atlanta has a quarterback this year, but we know they don't have Marcus Mariota. So we know they have Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. They have a top 10 offensive line. I just trust the floor of this team. That run game is the one good unit. The offense of Atlanta is the one unit to trust here on the field. Atlanta has been another team I've been all in on the preseason. Plus 110 to make the playoffs. Love that in the week NFC. Plus 220 to go worst to first in the division. We just talked about the Saints. I agree with the Bundo on a lot of the hesitation on New Orleans this year. Atlanta has that same soft schedule, and that starts right here. We get the rookie quarterback on the road debut. If you look back, guys, do you know who the last quarterback who was the number 1 pick is to win in week 1? It is David, not Derek, David Carr in 2002. Since then, number 1 quarterbacks are winless, 0-13-1, and have covered the spread 1 out of those 14 times. So Frank Reich, our guy in Carolina, has never covered in week 1. He's 0-4-1 by 8 points a game, does not have his team ready. I like Atlanta. Carolina looked terrible in the preseason. The line is in rough shape. Chark and Thielen are hurt at receiver. Brian Burns, I don't know if he's even playing or what's happening with him. This line, like you said, I'd rather the 3, but I think it should be about 6. So I'll take Atlanta -3.5.
That is an injury report for the Panthers that just continues to grow, and it's not promising for the rookie quarterback on the offensive side. And you mentioned Burns. He was a participant Wednesday in practice in pads, but it does not feel promising. So Brandon's willing to go -3.5 on the Atlanta Falcons. Luke, your second one, and I think DeBundo is going to follow up because he's in agreement on this one you got for us here.
Yep, so I'm going to go with the Packers +1.5 at the Bears, which we got the Justin Fields, who's the flashy quarterback that is on everyone's fantasy team, and then we have Jordan Love, who is replacing Aaron Rodgers, who is on nobody's fantasy team. This is just one that I think the Packers aren't getting a lot of credit because Aaron Rodgers isn't there. And then we have the Bears, who are getting almost too much credit because they have Justin Fields. The Packers still have weapons at running back, wide receiver, tight end. They have a solid O-line. Christian Watson and Dobbs haven't practiced. I think Dobbs practiced today and Christian
Correct.
Watson was still held out. But I still expect Watson to play. Even if he didn't, it wouldn't really matter, honestly, in terms of my bet. But the Packers are just like historically a great team, and the Bears just haven't. And history are different teams, but at the same time, Aaron Rodgers is on the Jets, and I really think that is just everyone is tossing out the Packers at this point. The Packers last year were dead last against rushing quarterbacks, but actually performed pretty well against Fields. Fields has never had a positive VPA game passing against the Packers, which is great because the Packers are returning a bunch of starters. And then we have Tevin Jenkins, who is the Bears' best offensive lineman at left tackle, who was just announced out for 6 weeks. So that should help even more. This one at plus 1.5, it was surprising to see the Packers, even if it is a tiny underdog, an underdog when it opened, and it still is. And I wouldn't be surprised if this closes at a pick'em or maybe even Packers -1. So Packers plus 1.5.
Yeah, and it's toggled between 1 and 1.5 throughout the week, and maybe that's a connection to Dobbs and Watson. As you said, Dobbs back at practice. And yeah, I'm kind of with you. A breath of fresh air, maybe, with Aaron Rodgers gone. Yes, the trends are great when he plays anyone in his division, but maybe this gives Matt LaFleur a chance to really show himself. And as Brandon said earlier, it does take time. And I realize Jordan Love is starting for the first time in his career consistently. At least that's the plan. But it's going to take time for Justin Fields and those new weapons as well. Claypool for a full year, DJ Moore in the offseason. It is a second-year offensive coordinator. We shall see if Justin Fields evolves as a passer. DeBundo, what can you add to this? You're also on the Packers for your second best bet.
Where are the Bears better than the Packers? Definitely.
Crickets.
That would be my question. I don't know the answer to that question. You have to give me something. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, defensively, I've been the biggest Joe Barry critic. I think everybody on NFL Twitter and any NFL conversation will tell you that like he's a pretty overrated defensive coordinator, because every year we go, well, look at how talented the Packers are defensively, and then they get kind of bullied. But this Bears offense is not one that's going to run you over. And that's been the Packers' biggest problem, is that their run game, when teams can run the ball on them, it's a convoy, and that was exposed at various points last season. But the Bears offense is not really that. They're more of a finesse offense. And Justin Fields, look, I get the idea that he could take this big leap. He could. And that gives the Bears like a high upside. But I don't think they're that great on paper right now. Their defense still has a ton of holes. They really haven't plugged. They're still kind of developing this rebuild under and around Fields. And his accuracy rate was 6th worst in the NFL last year. His pressure rate in the pocket was bottom 5. Part of that is the O-line was bad. Part of that is Fields is not very good at avoiding sacks. He still has that problem. He had that problem in college, and it's kind of continued. As good of an athlete as he is, as explosive as he is, his decision-making in the pocket remains to be a question mark. I have less doubt about Love right now. I think, Love, as a passer in limited samples we've seen, has been decisive. He's been solid in the pocket. There's accuracy questions with him too, but this is a better offensive line for sure. Brandon Anderson wrote about his NFL offensive line rankings. He had the Bears 25th. I think it's a pretty fair ranking that they're one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And so, this market has moved steadily toward Green Bay. It was 2.5 all summer. And as limits have gone up and as the market has taken more money, it's slowly started its trend toward what I think will ultimately close a pick'em. So I'm going to take the point. I'm going to take the Packers on the road in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, the silence really speaks volumes when you ask that question. Where are the Bears better right now entering the season? Brandon Anderson and Luke's in alignment on this next pick you've got for us. A home dog, it's rah-rah Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, we love our rah-rah Tomlin spot. We went here often toward the end of last season, and a lot of that reason was TJ Watt. So we're going back to the well. Give me the Steelers plus 2.5 at home against the 49ers. And yeah, I just think this is a classic fade Kyle Shanahan, the favorite, and rah-rah Tomlin underdog. Give me the combo spot here. Pittsburgh's defense, I think, is the best unit on the field. That's right. Pittsburgh has the best unit on the field, not the 49ers. That defense, when Watt played last year, was top 10 against the pass, and they were number 1 against the rush. And remember, last year, we're getting a lot of talk, all the hype about Brock Purdy. But if you look at the underlying numbers, the offensive jump that happened in the second half of the year was McCaffrey and the run game and the blocking. And then Purdy was kind of just doing what Garoppolo did as far as the metrics said. I know it's a different style, but the run game is what exploded. Pittsburgh can control the run game. TJ Watt, when he was on the field last year, Steelers win 8-2. When he didn't play, 1-6. You can't really make it much clearer than that. And to me, this is a chance to fade the Brock Purdy narrative. And I'm looking to fade until he proves otherwise. Last year in the regular season, we know he never lost a game. We know he piled up numbers, 2 or more touchdowns every game. Average DVOA he faced was 22nd in the NFL over that stretch. Now, he did face Dallas in the playoffs. We know that, and he won. He had 1 touchdown and 4 field goals. He had a 19% bad throw rate. Cannot say that he particularly overwhelmed us in that game. So, Dabando, you mentioned the offensive line rankings. San Francisco's have been slowly and steadily falling the last few years. I'm a little worried about their line against what I think is maybe the best pass rush in the NFL. Not just TJ Watt, but Alex Highsmith and now Marcus Golden too. I think they get after Purdy. We've seen him be erratic. We've seen him make throws that could be turnovers, and they haven't been. Maybe Minka Fitzpatrick gets that interception or someone. I think this is one of those spots that Monday morning, everyone's talking about, oh man, did the 49ers blow it by sticking with Brock Purdy? 3 turnovers. We got the whole story. Kyle Shanahan, 1-5 against the spread in week 1. Only 2-4 straight up. That San Fran defense, we don't really know how much Nick Bosa is going to be able to give. And I think their corners can get beaten by the Steelers receiver. So, rah-rah Tomlin, specific stat here, that normally the rah-rah is better later in the season, but Tomlin as a home underdog 7 or less at any point of the season, 14-3-3 against the spread. So if you add in the short line and the home, that is an 82% cover rate by 6 points, including 13-7 straight up on the money line. So not your traditional rah-rah spot, but the home dog, the short dog there, I love it. So give me the Steelers plus 2.5.
So despite the fact in starts Brock Purdy made and starts he finished, I must add, the Niners did not lose a game, but Brandon's going against him. Week 1 on the road against Pittsburgh. All right, Luke, what can you add to this? You're on Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Pittsburgh as well, and it does feel like a lot of people are starting to hop on the Steelers bandwagon, which
worries you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm asking if it worries you.
Oh, it does worry me, but it's fine. We're like they had an amazing preseason. Pickett looked fantastic, but Brock Purdy, like I genuinely don't understand how he is playing at an elite or a level to where he can start an NFL game. Like the guy had elbow surgery not too long ago, and we all saw his elbow blow out in a playoff game less than a year ago. And you watched him play in the preseason, and there were some videos I saw on NFL Twitter that were like overblowing, like arcs on short passes because he didn't have the arm strength, which like I kind of buy because I'm not a doctor, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think if if the Niners go to the Super Bowl, I think it will be behind Sam Darnold, and I have them in my Super Bowl pick behind Sam Darnold, who looked phenomenal and has had a bad break on all the teams that he's been playing for. And this is the first good team he's been on. But back to the pick, we have Purdy, who 39% of his passes were at or behind the line of scrimmage. And the Steelers defense without TJ Watt were number 1 against EPA on passes from at or behind the line of scrimmage last year. Now you get TJ Watt, you get all the factors Brandon spoke to, and it's just a Steelers team that is up and coming against a Niners team that it's just a bad spot for them. With a quarterback, I just have too many question marks to put trust in.
Well, I'll tell you why the Brock Purdy thing is blowing you away, because since they drafted Alex Smith, they've had Kaepernick, they've had Jimmy Garoppolo. They've just found a way to plug and play. They drafted Trey Lance. It hasn't become a problem for them over the last decade. Maybe this is the time it will.
And and all of those quarterbacks are kind of like diamonds in the roughs. And
Yeah.
Darnold has all the talent in the
right here,
world. Where like it didn't work with Trey Lance, and Darnold, like traits wise, he has them all. Who knows? And I don't even feel like it's that hot of a take that if they went to the Super Bowl behind Sam Darnold, it would be a hot take. But
They almost, I mean,
apparently it
Shanahan
is.
said they would bring in Phillip Rivers to start the Super Bowl. Of course it's not a hot take. Sorry, I'm just getting upset because that was a thing. That was brought up. Okay. All right. Sorry, Luke. I got upset there for a second.
It's okay.
Phillip Rivers in the Super Bowl. Yeah, right. Okay, DeBundo, take us home. You're going to go to Sunday Night Football for our final best bet.
Did not have Sam Darnold and Phillip Rivers discussion in the week 1 pod on my bingo card. Phillip Rivers was a top 10 quarterback the year he retired, for the record. But I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys, -3. I do not love that as we're recording this podcast, Tyron Smith just popped up on the injury report with a potential issue. But I'm going to assume he's going to be good to go for Sunday night. This Dallas team, probably the team I'm buying the most relative to the market in the entire league. Their win total you can find over 10 at -135. Love that. But I like them in this spot against the Giants. Look, the last time we saw the Giants play football, they closed an 8-point road underdog in Philadelphia in the divisional round of the playoffs and got absolutely waxed in that game. And now, if you were to just say, okay, we're going to flip home field, I didn't have a material difference between the two teams. But if you flipped home field, that would get you to about what this number is right now, with Dallas laying 3.5 at some books, but currently a -3 at BetMGM. And of course, the almighty 3, very important. Bet it there. Get the -3, -115 is out there as we speak. But I love.
Hey, real quick with the Smith news. Any chance it gets under 3 to 2.5, or
if he were ruled out, maybe it gets to a 3. I don't think he's worth more than a half point. But even though one of the best tackles in the NFL, I really love the offseason additions that Dallas has made. I think they're going to be all over Daniel Jones. The Giants' offensive line remains the biggest weakness, I think, for their offense here, and I have major question marks about it. Dallas's pressure rate last year was 5% better than every other team in the NFL. They improved their defensive line in the run-stopping perspective. They went out and got Gilmore to be a corner 2. The Giants, for me, offensively, still don't have a reliable receiver. And I know that people have liked some of the additions, and people are excited about the speed of Hyatt, and like you're going to try to renaissance Paris Campbell, but there's just no consistent option for me in this offense. And so it's going to have to be more Mike Kafka, Brian Dable, dark magic to make this offense work. And I just think it's going to be really hard to pull off against a Dallas team that's going to live in their backfield the entirety of the night and probably play from the front. And then look, the biggest question mark with Dallas is their offensive line, or excuse me, not their offensive line, their offensive coordinator situation after, Kellen Moore leaves. I think because we've all decided we don't like Mike McCarthy, we have attributed all of the bad things to the Dallas offense last year to him, and then given all the good things to Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore did not do a great job, I thought, last season as offensive coordinator. Way too much conservative play calling on 2nd and long, especially. They were one of the heaviest run teams in the league on 2nd and long. Way too much Zeke Elliott. Okay, maybe that's McCarthy. But then they get into the situation where McCarthy's traditional sense has been that he's too pass heavy. But I think given their personnel and given the addition of Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup a year off the ACL, maybe has more juice than he showed last year, this is a team built to throw the ball. And Dak Prescott threw into tight windows more than any quarterback in the NFL last year. Again, could be a criticism of Kellen Moore, who designed this offense. So I think that for all Mike McCarthy's flaws as a game manager and as a head coach, I think he deserves a shot here as offensive coordinator or as the main guy calling the plays. And I think it's going to be a boon for this Dallas offense to throw the ball more. So I think the ceiling's higher for Dallas, and I love them laying 3 here. Again, 3.5 is a pass for me. I know how good divisional home underdogs have been. I know the trend, but I'm going against it. I'm going with Dallas -3.
Okay, gentlemen, more memories are made when you are there for live NFL action. And when you need tickets, our friends at Ticketmaster have got you covered as the official marketplace of the National Football League. Ticketmaster gives you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you 360-degree previews of your section to make sure you have the best view of those pivotal plays. And if your plans change, Ticketmaster gives you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, Mobile tickets make getting in on game day a breeze. And you can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Find tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/NFL. Before we go, Brandon Anderson, a week 2 look-ahead spot that you have circled that you'd like to give out now before everyone overreacts and loses their minds after week 1.
Yeah, exactly. So the goal of the look ahead, of course, is to grab a line for next week. Those lines are up now. We want to get one that we think is going to be on the move by Sunday night. Once those lines all reopen, get some of that closing value, that sweet CLV to add to our portfolio. That said, this is the 1 week of the year I'm going to go a little cautiously on the look ahead because, again, we don't have information about these teams yet, and we're going to get a lot of it on Sunday. So I think don't go too crazy on a look ahead here. One that I do like and will play is the Atlanta Falcons. My Falcons, just give me the money line. Home against the Packers, it's -110. If you need the points, I see a -1.5. Prefer the money line, but don't mind the -1.5. Look, I already feel like we talked about the Falcons cruising past the Panthers. We're taking them over the -3.5. We probably expect a big win here. This is kind of the hot nerd team this year, right? It reminds me of the way everyone got excited about the Eagles a year ago. The Falcons were only 2.5-point favorites against the Panthers. That jumped 2 and then past the key number to where we're getting it now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta has a big week. Do we start to get some steam there? Now on the other side, I kind of am with the two of you guys on the Packers. The one thing that pushed me a little bit away as a caution there, the big thing that Green Bay does not do well is defend the run. And the only thing that Chicago does do well is run the football. If the Packers lose in Chicago, and I don't think they will, but I think it's possible, if they lose, it's because Jordan Love wasn't good, and now we have that information, or it's because the Bears ran all over them, and we have that information. And if that happens, the Falcons are number 3 in run DVOA. The Packers defense is number 31 in run defense DVOA. That's a huge matchup advantage that I'm going to like no matter what happens. But if we find out after watching week 1 that the Packers just don't look very good, then I think this line gets past 3 in a hurry and we lose a lot of value here. So I'm not too worried about the line moving toward the Packers too far. It's not going to get to a -3 on the road. So give me the Falcons, -1.5 if you need it, but I'll take the money line -110 for week 2.
All right, very good. Let's recap the picks. Brandon Anderson for week 1, Houston +10, Atlanta -3.5, Pittsburgh +2.5. His look-ahead spot, Atlanta Falcons on the money line against the Packers in week 2. Luke Swain is on Seattle -5.5, Green Bay +1.5, also riding with Pittsburgh +2.5, and Anthony DeBundo on the Titans +3, Green Bay +1.5, and the Dallas Cowboys -3. For Luke Swain, Anthony DeBundo, Brandon Anderson, Brendan Glasheen, that is going to do it for our first Action Network podcast NFL Week 1 Best Bets episode. We're presented by BetMGM. We'll have Joe Gallant joining Brandon, Luke, and myself next week. Best of luck. Enjoy the games. Bet responsibly. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.